Hello, we are halfway through the year, so I wanted to participate in the mid-year book tag. I collated a couple of questions from a couple of different videos that I read, and the very first one is, what is the best book you've read so far in 2025? I have two answers for this one. I'm going to do a fiction and a non-fiction. For fiction, we have Dune by Frank Herbert. I have read the first 3 of these so far, as we will talk about in the rest of the video, and I am shocked how much I liked them. Again, we're going to talk about these so much, so I'm not going to go too far in depth, but I have absolutely loved my time reading these so far, and I feel very proud to have these on my shelf, all completed and all tabbed up. So that's the first one. My nonfiction pick is The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. We have talked about John Green a lot. I just absolutely adore him. I've always loved all of his work, and honestly, The Anthropocene Reviewed might be my favorite one yet. This is an essay collection where John Green just talks about these seemingly random things in his life. Everything from the Canada geese to the penguins of Madagascar. He talks about Diet Dr. Pepper and the Indy 500, and it's all of these random things, but it's just his thoughts on it and how it relates to the human experience. And then at the end of every essay collection, he gives it a star rating. So for instance, this one, Whispering, he gives Whispering 4 stars, and it's just a little two-pager about whispering. And I just feel like this is one of the most unique ideas for a book, and I feel like anyone who's ever dreamed of writing a book, this is what they wish that people wanted from them, or at least how I think in my brain. And it works so well because of that tone and that narration style that he has. And I just loved this book so much, and will definitely be going back to it. So very quotable, so lovely. Highly, highly recommend. The best sequel I have read so far, and the only sequel that I've read so far besides rereads, is Dune Messiah. I was very nervous to continue the series because I felt like part of the reason that I got the first Dune book so much was because I have seen the movie so many times, and so I felt like it was pretty easy to stay with it so far as characters and all of that sci-fi stuff that I'm not usually very good at. So I was super nervous to continue, and I heard obviously that they start getting weird at some point. But Dune Messiah was lovely. It focuses more so on this internal struggle that Paul and other characters have. It felt like there was a shift in focus without changing why the first book was so good, I guess. And it focuses a lot more on relationships, and this sounds wild, but kind of sexual politics, and I absolutely loved this sequel. New releases that I haven't read yet but want to. I'm very much looking forward to reading Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez, and Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. These are all 3 authors that I have loved their books in the past. They're just only out in hardback right now, and of course libraries can't keep copies on the shelves because they're so popular, and so I just haven't gotten to them yet because I'm not buying any more hardbacks, but I'm very much looking forward to all of those. Atmosphere in particular, I'm very interested to see what I think about it, because I did not personally enjoy Carrie Soto Is Back, which is the last one that she wrote, and I've heard very, very, very mixed things about Atmosphere. Half the people that I've seen talk about it are I sobbed, this is her most beautiful one yet, and then the other half of people that I've seen reacting to it are it doesn't compare at all to her past books, and that they felt pretty bored by it. And so I'm very interested to see what I think about those. My most disappointing read of 2025, this one is still like a 3-star, okay? But I'm giving this one to The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I really enjoyed The Only One Left by Riley Sager, and this is only the second book of his I've ever read. So I had high expectations for it, I guess, but more so like any books that I'm finding I'm not going to enjoy, I've just started DNFing, which has been very freeing. So this is like the lowest rated of all my books for the year, even though like it was a perfectly fine book. It just fell to the bottom of the heap because I've had such a good reading year, if that makes any sense. So if you're looking for a thriller that you're not quite sure where it's gonna go, it's a perfectly fine book. I did end up unhauling it after I was done with it because it didn't feel like anything like super special. Like I felt like The Only One Left had a lot of ideas that I was like, wow, how did he possibly come up with this? But maybe that's just like the tropes that I like more than the tropes that are in The House Across the Lake, if that makes any sense. So that's my lowest one of the year, but not a bad book. My most surprising reads of 2025, once again, is going to be Dune by Frank Herbert, as well as Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. People talk about this one so much, and so I wanted to know what all the hype was about. And the entire book, I'm like, this is so silly. It's very overwritten. It's very fantastical. The relationships in this, like, not a single healthy relationship in sight. And yet, I was hooked. And I bought the next one, and I haven't read it yet, but I'm looking forward to hopefully reading the entire series. So I was super surprised by how much this one ended up reeling me in. I really enjoyed it. My most anticipated read for the second half, my most anticipated release for the second half of 2025 is Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. I have heard it said many a different way, and Catabasis is what Google says, so that's what I'm going to stick with. I've only read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, but I really love the idea, everything we know about it so far. And I really loved Piranesi last year, was like my favorite book. And I feel like it sounds relatively similar in theme and structure and tone to that one. So I'm very much looking forward to Catabasis. Who is your favorite new author, debut or new to you? Surprise, surprise, is Frank Herbert. I do not usually like sci-fi or fantasy or anything of that sort. I have tried, I have never gotten into those books before. I only read this one because my roommate loved it so much and because I loved the movies so much. And I was shocked to find how much I loved it. And I think that is mostly due in part to Frank Herbert. I have never read writing like this. It is so easy to read. And that is such a weird thing to say about a sci-fi book that's like 700 pages long and was written in the 60s or 70s. But it's so easy to read. And there's a letter from him in the back of one of these books that, again, is written in, the 70s or whatever, but you would think that it was written in today's time frame. Just the way, it's not just like the themes of the things that he's talking about being so relatable to today, but it's also just like, I don't know, like his intonation, the way that he speaks is just so very modern. And I'd be so curious to hear from people that read it when it came out, if they felt the same way, or if it was weird because they didn't know it was going to be such a modern thing, if that makes sense. Another thing that I absolutely love about his writing is his like third person omniscient viewpoint that he takes. I've only ever read that in East of Eden by John Steinbeck, And I love John Steinbeck very much in his writing, but I do think that Frank Herbert does it even better, which is crazy. But he just so flawlessly jumps between different characters' perspectives throughout the book. You always know what everyone is thinking and what everyone's intentions are. And the fact that he could do that and you're still on the edge of your seat waiting to figure out what's going to happen is so interesting, that he's able to keep that tension while giving you everyone's thoughts. I don't know. I really, really love him and all of his quotes and how relatable they are still today, and how beautiful they are and how thoughtful they are. And it's gonna come up like 5 more times, but I just really, really loved the way that he writes. Who is your newest fictional crush in 2025? I cheated a little bit. I don't know if I would necessarily call these crushes, but I thought it would be funny to do dual Duncans. So first, in Dune, we have Duncan Idaho, who is played by Jason Momoa in the movies, and I'm sure that had something to do with the way that I was enjoying his character in the book. But I just loved his thought process behind different things, and the way that he spoke to everyone. And then in Once We Were Wolves, nope. And then in Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaughey, there's a character, a Scottish man named Duncan, and I just will always have a crush on any movie or TV show or book that has like an Irish or Scottish character. They're gonna be my favorite. It's just in here. I don't know. But he was lovely. And I really loved how heartwarming he was to Inti, who was our main character, who was very much an outcast, and how he helped her evolve her coldness towards being alive over the course of them being together in this book. So those are my dual Duncans. Very much related, who is your newest favorite character in 2025? I have a little list because from Dune, this is, you know, a series. I've read 3 of these at this point, and they're just so all expertly written. And so from Dune, I have on my list Duncan, Gurney, Jessica, Aurelian, and Aaliyah. I'm not going to say much about which of these they're in because I don't want to spoil anything. I know the books came out in like, you know, the 70s, but since the next movie will be coming out, yeah, I don't want to say too much, so I'm not going to say which books they're from, but you can 100% pinpoint my love for all these characters to the way that Herbert wrote them, and how thoughtful they are, which maybe they're not that thoughtful and it's just because we're getting to hear all of their thoughts, but I really adored all 3 of their characters all 5 of these characters in these 3 books. Another character that I absolutely loved was Phoebe from The Wedding People. This is a hardback that I picked up from my library shop. This is one of Katie's favorite books of last year, and so I've been looking forward to reading it, and I loved the way that Phoebe's character development was done in this book. It's the idea of like, what do you do? How do you act? How truthful are you when you don't have much else to live for? And the way that Phoebe starts sticking up for herself and being honest, and therefore making people, like, more and more people trust her and love her because she's doing that, I thought was really fabulously done. So that's Phoebe from The Wedding People. What book made you cry? Of course, my yearly reread of Daisy Jones and the Six made me cry. I just understand the heart of this book very much, and it just like tugs at those heartstrings very easily. Next, I cried reading Grief is for People by Sloane Crosley. This is a memoir of hers, and I have spoken at length about how much I love her ever since I read Cult Classic last year. I read 2 of her nonfiction books this year, this one, and I was told there would be cake essays, but this is the one that made me cry. If The Year of Magical Thinking was something that appealed to you, that you felt seen by, I would recommend picking this one up. A lot of similar themes and feelings come out of this one, and of course I cried. And then I cried in the previously mentioned Once There Were Wolves, because sister shit. This is from the perspective of an older sister trying to do her best to take care of the younger sister, and I have a younger sister, and regardless of if it's a book, if it's a song, if it's a movie, if there is a sister dynamic being explained, I will sob my eyes out. It cannot be helped. This one is also, it's hard to read. There's a lot of, like, one scene in particular that you're just like trying so hard to hold it together, but it's a hard read, so I will put that out there. But sister shit. And then I did a reread of the Summer I Turned Pretty series again, and I've spoken in the past about how much those books mean to me. I'm not going to hold them up because at this point all of this is versions of the Summer I Turned Pretty. I'm up to 4 now. But yeah, I cried. I cried for the characters, but I think at this point mostly I cry just because of how much they still mean to me and how much they meant to me growing up. What book made me happy, on the other hand? I'm going to go back to John Green's The Anthropocene Reviewed. John Green just makes me happy. All of his stuff is happy sad, and that's my favorite. And I feel like I've grown up with him, and I just love the way that this book was written and the things that it was about. But just if you want to feel like you're not alone in the world, John Green always is the answer, always. What is the most beautiful book that you've bought or read this year? I took this as like physically how it was printed, and that is going to be Bitterwater Opera by Nicolette Pieck. This is quite possibly the most beautiful printing of a book ever. I absolutely adore the cover so bad. It's just a teeny tiny little thing, and it's also a beautiful book inside, but loved. And it's so feely. Love. What books do you plan to read before the end of the year? I would love to do a reread of The Hunger Games, as the 5th book just came out. I never read the 4th one, but the first 3 came out when I was in junior high. And I often say, much like I say for The Summer I Turned Pretty, that like I was the target audience for these books. But I haven't read them since high school now, and I never read the 4th one. But the 5th one, being about Haymitch, is something that I do want to read at some point. I also still have some books on my physical TBR that we've talked about that I would like to get done. And then all of the books that I mentioned in like the releases that I haven't gotten to yet are also the books that I'm most looking forward to. How many nonfiction books have I read so far? I've read 6, The Anthropocene Reviewed, Grief is for People, I Was Told There Would Be Cake, and then 3 I haven't mentioned yet, A Movable Feast, which was a reread, Didion and Babbitts, and another John Green book, Everything is Tuberculosis. What have you reread this year? I reread Daisy Jones and the Six, The Picture of Dorian Gray, A Movable Feast, and the Summer I Turned Pretty series. How many 5 stars? I've had 9 Goodreads 5 stars. So those aren't necessarily all actually 5 stars. Some of them are like, you know, 4.5 or 4.75. But for the point of Goodreads, there have been 9, which I'm very excited about. Am I on track for my goal for this year? Yes, my goal for this year is 50 books, which is what I've done the last 2 years as well, and has seemed to be like a really good pace for me to keep at. It's almost like 1 a week, and as of now I am on track. And have I DNF'd anything? Yes. I DNF'd a few books that I'm still trying to get off of my TBR. The one I was the most disappointed by DNFing was A Haunting on the Hill. This is the first book that was given permission to reuse Hill House from The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Her estate like personally gave permission to this writer to reuse like the same house as a location in her book. And I just didn't like the way it was written, unfortunately. I don't know if that had something to do with trying to do Hill House from a modern time period. Like, you know, the characters are like using their phones and playing music and doing different things, and I don't know if that just felt too like juxtaposing in my mind to how you picture and read Hill House, but I just also, yeah, just didn't really care for the way it was written. So that's the one that I have like most, like gotten the most into, and then DNF'd and was quite sad about. But I'm still on track. I'm still reading. I am in a little bit of a rut right now, and I don't like that. But we shall continue. So that was my chaotic book tag video. And dear editing Kelsey, I hope that this works out, because I feel very goofy about it right now. Okay, bye.